So why don't we start with what the perfect night's sleep, based on your 30 years of research.
Right.
What does a perfect night's sleep look like in terms of how long you sleep, the various phases of sleep, how long you would be in those, just so that we have a benchmark for what would be ideal?
I think if you just look at a 10-year-old, you'll get what the perfect night's sleep looks like. They sleep beautifully. They have a beautiful homeostatic, which means it responds to what you're doing during the day, response, and how long you've been awake. They have a beautiful circadian, which means their body knows what time of day it is and what time they should go to sleep and what time they should wake up. And so the 10-year-old's sleep is perfect. Don't ever wake up a 10-year-old if you can possibly help it. They're doing a lot of really important things. And after that, our sleep changes during our teenage years, and we need just as much sleep as a 10-year-old, which is about 10 hours or 9 or 8 to 10 hours for sure. But teenagers' circadian rhythms change a little bit so that they fall asleep a little later and want to wake up a little later. So it's also a beautiful night's sleep if they are calm and not too engaged with social media at the wrong times. But anyway, that's a great night's sleep. Our sleep is actually pretty great until we're about 40 or 50 years old, and then varying depending on the individual, your sleep can start to become less efficient. And so it just depends. There are various things that can go wrong. You can get sleep apnea, which means you stop breathing when you fall into deep sleep.
Yep.
And that's not good because your brain and your whole body, your heart certainly needs oxygen. So you have to wake up a little in order to breathe. And people with sleep apnea, even to be diagnosed, they have to do that, wake up 5 times an hour, which is a lot. It's a lot in order to breathe. Or you could, there's just many different things that could go wrong.
Let me ask you about just kind of breaking this down.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Because you've been researching sleep for 30 years.
Yes.
You lecture about it all around the world.
Yeah.
And I would love to understand, when you fall asleep as an adult, how long should I stay asleep? And what's actually happening when it comes to the various sleep cycles?
Right.
Can you walk us through kind of you lay your head on the pillow, you drift off to sleep, then what happens in your body?
Right. Okay, so the perfect night's sleep for health as an adult is something around 7.5, 8 hours plus or minus an hour, something like that.
Okay.
And it happens at roughly, so you should be awakened by the sunlight, essentially. So that's something that resets our clock every day. And then so you kind of work back from there, from the time you need to awaken to get at least 7.5, 8 hours of sleep a night. Different people need different amounts of sleep. Some people need more like 9. Some people are fine with 6 for a while.
How do you know?
You just have to know from your own body. Some people, if they get 6 hours of sleep, they know already immediately when they wake up and going throughout the day, it wasn't enough. And so your body will tell you. And other people, wake up at 6 hours and they're fine. They feel great. So how do you know? You just kind of have to listen to your body. And one way to know is how sleepy you feel during the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about what can impact feeling sleepy during the day that is kind of surprising. But you already said one takeaway that I want to make sure that you listening got from us, which is you start with the time that you want to wake up. Mm-hmm. And then you roll the clock backwards, and you're basically saying that it's 7 to 8 hours, give or take an hour.
Yeah.
So you roll the clock backwards, probably 7 to 9 hours.
Yeah.
And that's when you need to fall asleep.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And what happens when you fall asleep? What are the phases that we go through as we're sleeping?
The very first stage is, of course, dozing. And we don't really know when we're dozing, except that, we sort of come conscious once in a while and say, oh, wow, okay, what happened in the last couple minutes? I don't know, because our memory starts not recording what we've been doing. And that lasts on average about 2 minutes before, for example, if you're reading a book and you fall asleep reading the book, you won't remember the last 2 minutes of reading. Or if you're listening to a podcast, you won't remember the last few minutes of the podcast before you actually fall asleep.
Or if I was talking to my husband and next thing you know, he's snoring.
Right.
He doesn't remember the last minute and a half of what I said.
That's exactly. Exactly.
So there's that dozing period, which I rather like. I love that sort of, you kind of drift from your mind spinning to all of a sudden almost like you're floating in a pool.
Right.
That only lasts 2 minutes?
No, stage 1 is variable. It's about, 2 to 5 minutes, something like that.
Okay, and you need that sort of stage 1 of dozing to get into stage 2. What happens next?
Then stage 2 is really an exciting stage. So between stage 1 and stage 2, there's something called hypnagogic hallucinations, which
I'm not even going to try. Hypnagogic hallucinations?
Hallucinations. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's our brain losing hold of reality, and all kinds of imagination things happen. For example, it can be as boring as feeling like you're falling off a step because not all of parts of your brain are asleep at the same time as you kind of drift into it. And so you feel the muscles relaxing and part of your brain says, I'm falling. And, and the hallucination is incorporated into that feeling of falling, and so you think, you're falling off a step. Or it can be as horrifying as feeling like there's a monster jumping on your chest and shaking you, and it can be very, very disturbing as well if you wake up from it. So they're pretty vivid hallucinations, almost like the dreams we have in REM sleep, only you don't have the atonia, which is all your muscles being inhibited to prevent you from acting out the dreams. So oftentimes people, if they have a vivid hallucination that's scary, can wake up from that and then feel like, oh, what just happened? Was there a monster in my room? Really? I think that's the idea of nightmares. Comes from that idea of just the hallucinations, the weird hallucinations that
And this
come.
is as your brain is sort of trying to drop itself into a deeper state of sleep.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and not everybody, and most people, in fact, don't wake up from that N2. It's called N1 is dozing. N2 is that state of sleep which has pretty vivid dreams, kind of, but they're not long story-like dreams like we have in REM sleep, but we'll get to that in a minute. So then from N2, which our brain is very active, we go into N3, which is also a time of activity, but it's really synchronous activity, like waves of activity going through our brain, and it's disconnected in time, one wave from another, so consciousness can't be maintained. And if you wake someone up out of N3 sleep, slow wave sleep, and ask them what they were dreaming, they will not report having dreamed anything. It will be, a blank slate. And it's actually pretty hard to wake someone up out of that state. It's called a deep sleep.
And what's the purpose? You use the word wave. Like what is actually happening in your body when you're in that third phase and the wave is happening?
Yeah. So that's a time when we know that our brain is cleaning itself, actually.
Wait, what?
Yes.
It's cleaning itself?
Yeah, it's cleaning itself.
Of what?
Of all the junk that builds up during the daytime when we're awake and alert.
What kind of junk builds up?
Well, proteins get unfolded and, so things break down, energy is used. All of that gets restored in that deep state of sleep. So,
what would happen if you didn't get that deep stage of sleep and the cleaning wave? I'm seeing like somebody coming in after a big party and cleaning up all the cups.
Right.
It's like this wave comes through your brain?
It's like a wave cleansing the brain, yes. And there's one per minute or so, actually one per second, actually. So a lot more often than that. And it sweeps from front to back. And it just pushes all the junk into your cerebral spinal fluid and out into your
Is that why
body.
my back hurts?
I don't think so,
kidding.
but yeah, that's a good question. So if you don't get it, you actually don't get a chance to clean your brain like that. So you really need it. And that's the sleep you get mostly in the first half of the night after you fall asleep. So you go from N1 to N2 to N3. N3 lasts, 20 to 30 minutes or so, and then you go back into N2 briefly, and then into REM sleep, which is it's called REM sleep. And
how is that different than the waves? So
it's very different. It's actually also called paradoxical sleep because if you look at brain activity, it looks just like someone's awake.
Really? Why?
And thoughts are going through, and dreams are happening. It's really strong imagery in your dreams, and that's when, if you wake someone up out of that state of REM sleep, they will always report a dream, 90% of the time. Even people who, if you ask, say, oh, I never dream or I never remember my dreams, if you wake them up out of that stage, they'll remember. It's the reason why I think the reason why people don't remember their dreams is because they are solidly asleep and don't wake up out of that state. So don't worry, you are dreaming.
What is your brain doing
when you're dreaming?
Yeah, in that REM stage.
You are, well, first of all, you're creating dreams. It's also important for the process of creativity and for changing your mind. It's actually an extremely plastic state. So it's paradoxical because electrically it looks like wakefulness, but chemically it's very different. So two of the neurochemicals that are off during dream state are two neurochemicals that keep you attuned to things that are novel and that are coming in from the outside world, and help you learn from things in the outside world, and those are norepinephrine and serotonin. They are off during REM sleep, so you're attuned internally to internal thoughts and internal images, and so you can actually build your own schema from the things that you learned during the day that are now registered in your brain. It's not a time for new learning. It's not a time for listening to new podcasts and getting that information in. It's a time to assimilate the things that you've already learned into coherent patterns that make sense.
I want to see if I can give that back to you to make sure that you listening are tracking, because I just had a big whoa, aha kind of moment here. So you said that the first 4 hours of sleep are critical for creativity, and I've also, I think, read in your research that it's also critical for the making of memories.
Yeah, for the assimilation of memories.
What is the difference between
making
and assimilation of memories?
So making memories requires us to pay attention to things in the outside world and put them together. And assimilating means you've taken those things from the outside world and now you're putting them together into packets we call schema, which are related pieces of information. And it's good for creativity because these new pieces of information get assimilated into different schema in ways that we can't do when we're awake.
Okay, I think I'm actually getting this.
Okay.
So I have read that sleep is critical for learning new behavior, for locking in your habits, for retaining any information that you've been researching or reading, for skill development. And if I'm following you, what you're basically saying is that during these first 4 hours of sleep, particularly REM, the chemicals, or I don't know if that's the right word, but the chemicals in your brain, which are serotonin and norepinephrine, or however you say it.
Norepinephrine, noradrenaline.
Noradrenaline, that's easier for me to say. Noradrenaline, they're not present, which means you're only tuned into the information that is in your brain and your body from your experience today.
Yeah.
And because those two chemicals aren't present during this sleep cycle, your brain is locking in these new patterns and habits and skills and memories. You're calling them, from an academic standpoint, like each one of these memories or this new skill or this new neurotransmitter that gets created is a schema.
Yeah, it goes into a schema. Schema are things like, what is Christmas? There's a whole host of things that are associated with Christmas, or, what does summer mean? And there's a whole host of things. And that's a schema into which a lot of things get built.
Yeah. Oh, I understand. So it's almost like our own internal search architecture.
Yeah.
I think about it like Legos, Summer Lego box has a whole lot of little Lego cubes in it of different colors, and you can create different things. Yeah. This is really cool. Mm-hmm. And so neuroplasticity and habit formation, one of the huge takeaways that you've already given us is that sleep is critical for that to happen. Like you have to have sleep in order to have that formation happening in your brain.
That's right. Because during the day you can assemble these, you can collect these Lego pieces, but you don't assemble them into a coherent schema.
So you're one of the most renowned sleep researchers in the world. What is your sleep routine?
That's a great question.
Can you explain why we sleep and why it's so important?
Sleep is great for the immune system. It's great for cognition.